Hey, I'm Matt, and both of you who watch this channel regularly know that once a week I break down world building techniques, tricks, and tips, usually by examining one thing at a time. But this week we are going to continue this long form exploration into the process and what I'm doing as I am applying all these world building techniques, tricks, and tips to my own urban fantasy series that I'm working on currently. I'm about a third of the way into it at this point, so, rough drafts, let's see how that goes. So this week we're going to be looking at my process and with understandings of urban fantasy, masquerades, building up and building out, and how all of the fantasy conceits all trickle down from the idea of magic to the culture of magic in this series. So I hope you'll stick around to see how it goes. So it's been a few weeks since I've done this. We've of course had sickness, fostering stuff, a holiday, and so I knew some of this was coming. And so built up a couple of extra videos, which of course I lost all of them in transferring them over, got some audio but no visuals. And of course these were the weeks that I didn't save my scripts. So lesson learned, always save your stuff at all stages of it because you might need it. And I'm kind of redoing this one by memory. But here we go. As I mentioned last time, I'm working on a urban fantasy series, Inner Circle. The idea is that pretty much every magic system exists in it. It's going to be kind of a magic detective story, each book, with the main character who can douse. And so they are usually trying to solve some type of crime, magical crime within the secretive magic society. Idea is that also that it's a kind of an on-ramp. Each one is self-contained. So you read one of them, it's a self-contained story. You can get into the series at any single book, which is a lot different than my other series, which is just finishing up or should be finishing up. Fourth book of that one, which is very, very interlocked. I swore I'd never do that again. So then I immediately went and decided to do a detective stories where you need all of your clues and they all need to interlock. So the stories themselves will be separate, but I forgot how much things are important within the story itself. Behind me you can see this is the house that the story is going to be taking place in, and I'm like, oh yeah, and then they turn left and I'm like, oh, I actually need to figure this out. So level of detail, you discover it along the way. But anyways, as I said last time in one of the other videos, all magic systems exist. I had two things to really point out. There was that one, and second, that magic kind of warps things. It's kind of like radiation. So the more magic you use damages the area and also the user. And with that in mind, that's what's going to filter down into the cultural understanding, how the magic, the prime mover, which is, we've discussed before, is the one thing that the story is kind of centered around, is the thing that you can't remove without the story breaking down and no longer existing. So prime mover in this one is magic systems exist, and so then we're going to look today at how that filters down through that lovely triangle into culture, and how the culture is going to be affected, this secret magic culture. But before we get to the culture, some things to get out of the way. First of all is I have set this book, this series, in 2008. And the idea is that the character is going to age over time. He starts off at 17. This is not YA, but he is 17 when the story starts. And I did this for two reasons. One of the reasons is that urban fantasy gets dated very quickly. I'm trying to remember the name of the Russian books that I really like. Night Watch. I remember reading that, and like the first book he's like, oh man, I've got this really cool CD player, and then the next one he's like, oh man, these MP3s I've got are just so awesome, and it just felt really old. Him embracing the technology and feels very dated. So I'm kind of embracing that lamp shading, which is a term, is like you bring attention to it, and I'm going to embrace it and make it very set in 2008, and take all that culture into it. So I've had to research 2008 because my memory isn't that great, and I made a rhyme all the time. Anyways, the second reason I'm kind of doing this is because there is a magical iPod in it, and that was something I was thinking about when I was conceiving of this story. Long ago, I'd have all these playlists on my iPod, and those iPods still exist. And they're kind of cool because they're still a snapshot. It's in my car, plug it in whenever I'm tired of the radio, and it's broken and it only plays on random. And it's kind of a cool quality that is going to be incorporated in the stories. So to me, that story is still sort of cemented to that era and all those playlists I made per year. So that's kind of what it is. Third one is incorporating the culture and locations for the story. So time period, the things that were going on in 2008, kind of newsroom. I think that was the a wonderful show from HBO when HBO was a thing. And, so embracing the things that are going on at that time period, the characters are kind of aware of it. And then also the locations themselves are going to be kind of the story. So each story kind of takes place in a specific, a very specific location that is real. First one is taking place in Sherman, Texas, where I went to college. The second one is going to take place in New York City, where we lived for a while. So each of those locations becomes a character in it. Next thing I should look at is that there is a masquerade going on. Masquerade, as we've looked at before, is the idea that magic users are hiding the magic from the mundane society and the muggles, that kind of thing. And this is important, and it is a large part of urban fantasy in and of itself. Some people have asked about urban fantasy that doesn't have it, and that should be a whole discussion in and of itself. The Masquerade exists in this world, and if you haven't watched Masquerade, there's a video up about it, hopefully with a little thing up. Magic exists in this world, and the new magical culture that I'm making is kind of divided into two, and I am breaking it into cities, which are what is called the Circle. That's just what their kind of loose government structure is, and then there are the territories, which are kind of called the boonies, and they are called the boonies by the people in the Circle, but the people in the territories think the circles are circle jerks, So that was our first breakdown, and it is kind of cool because it is reflecting America's kind of rural and urban divide. So I'm going to get to play with that and expand on it and extrapolate it within this secret magic society. So then I had to decide what was the parameters of the Circle itself, and I decided that any city over about a million population, comes and goes, is considered Circle territory, and then all the highways that link up all the cities. So as long as you're in a city or on one of the highways, you are a part of this Circle and have to abide by their rules. And so I had to do some then research of how many cities there are in America that have over 1 million populations. There's about 44, I believe. That was part of my notes that I had last time, but I have lost it, but I'm going off of that. And as I said in one of my videos before, I built this little spreadsheet to kind of look at things and to see what the population is. And I decided that magic is only 1% of 1% of the population. And so when you think about that, that's not that many magicians in America itself. The United States population back then was 300 million in 2008, so that's 30,000 mages total in the United States. And that still seems like a lot, that it is just one kind of town. So a city of, so then breaking it down further with my little spreadsheet, look at the city population of the DFW area in 2008 was 4.9 million. That means there's 490 magicians in all of the DFW area, which is very large. So they don't actually see each other that often, which is why I've kind of gone with a looser governing system for them. So yeah, and then again, if smaller cities, Sherman, which is not anywhere near 1 million people in 2008, had 38,000 people. That meant there were 2 level 1 mages by my system and 1 level 2. The DFW one by counter example was 190 level 1 mages, 98 level 2. We had got large enough population that it didn't have all the way up to 2 level 8 magicians, which are really powerful if you remember the point system that I discussed earlier, or the level system that I discussed earlier. They could do incredible things, but you kind of need enough people to have them do that. And that's just kind of a rough estimate. There may not be, as we'll discuss in just a second, more powerful mages kind of move out to the territories as they get older and more powerful. Okay, but back to the circles. As I said, 1 million plus population, and I'm kind of going in metroplexes, So that's the Circle. That is the loose government. Again, since there's not that many people, you don't really need a whole bunch of... There's a point where one of the characters says that the American magicians are kind of the best and worst of libertarianism because there's so few of them. They abide by their own rules. They think they're special, and they are special. So they just keep everything to a very, very bare minimum. And there's history behind that of civil wars within their system, which is why this system exists. We're not going to delve into that, but that is underpinning world building that I, as the author, know that the audience gets hints of and is brought out when it's necessary. So as we discussed last time, magic as kind of radiation. That means there were 3 levels of things that would damage both the area and the person. And Level 1 is just the kind of things that are plausible, but things that are possible but implausible happen. Coincidences, flipping a coin 50 times and getting heads. That happens a lot to magicians, and all cities are all in kind of stage 1. Stage 2 is when physics starts to break down and things get a little hairy. And then stage 3 is it's called a snapback. Reality breaks. The reality rushes in. It's like a nuclear bomb going off. And everyone in the circle wants to avoid that. And as we also remember, the more magic you do as a magician, the more it kind of changes you, and you start getting like extra teeth, and then your eyes start glowing. Weird stuff starts happening until you are just kind of divorced from your body, and that's level 3. Oh, and the more further you are along, and the levels of you personally is more kind of like you being a match. So like if I'm at level 2 and I'm in an area of level 2, there's a much higher chance of a snapback happening. So the circle tries to stop all that from happening with their laws, and they're really simple laws, which are just 3. First one, hide, and that is basically the masquerade. Keep your abilities hidden from the mundanes, muggles, whatever you want to call them. And you can share it, as they say, but you were now responsible for them, and if they give it away, then you both receive the punishment. And I guess who should doles out the punishment is the inner circle. They are the law enforcement of the circle, and it's only like 3% of them. So I have another spreadsheet somewhere of like how few there are in an area. So they really are judge, juries, and police officers, like Texas Rangers of times past. They say, stop doing that. And you have to obey them, whatever they tell you. As arbitrary as it is, there are systems for arguing with them and bringing in others. But for the most part, if they say stop doing that, you don't stop doing that. They can punish you however they see fit. That's kind of the rules, and other inner circle police the inner circle. So rule 1, hide your stuff. The inner circle will enforce it if you are not hiding well. 2, abide. Again, follow the inner circle, do what they say. But there's corollary also that is if you are in a territories area, you have to obey their laws as well. There's only 3 laws for the circle, and the territories basically have these same laws, but then they have extra laws in there. So book 1's taking place in an area, and this is called the Circle and Chains, and their laws also include tithing, and you have to have a sponsor, and you have to share your true name with the sponsor. So there are extra rules in the territories, and even if you're a circle, and you're in the territories, you better do what they tell you to do in that area, or else they can punish you as they see fit. Third rule is declare, and that is basically you carry a sigil that says this is who I am and this is the group that I belong to. And so people in the circle carry something on them with a circle on it, and people in the territories, like the Circle and Chains, carry a symbol of the Circle and Chains. I know that sounds silly, but it'll make sense in the book itself. And when you meet another magician, you say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so of this," and they say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so of the plastic keys," and they show you a plastic key. Example, or I am of da-da-da, here's my ring with the signet of it on there. So you carry your symbol and you display it, and you declare who your allegiances and alliances are. But there's also a little bit more to it. They have kind of symbols to an area. So, when you're traveling into the territories, they will have symbols hidden around that if you have the right eyes and are a magician and know what you're looking for, you'll see them. They're kind of like hobo symbols, which I really like, and this idea of like, you can get food here if you listen to a story, which is one of some of the hobo symbols. Like that symbol meant that you knew you could beg for food as long as you let the Christians prophesy to you. So that kind of thing. The magicians have a similar symbol system that's going to be incorporated into the stories. So the territories we're not going to look at today. It was just mostly the inner circle because as the title of the series is Inner Circle, it mostly involves them. But they're loosely based on geographic regions. Hopefully I have my notes up showing a picture of that. And I've assigned each region kind of a symbol, and they're kind of random. And I think I used chatbot to, I used a randomizer to pick them, and I will change them as such as I need it. And the areas kind of the territories shift and change. Usually they're, but only in their kind of like borders. That's what changes a little forth. You know, 2 of the territories might go to war, and you know, but it's going to be a secret war. And remember, they also don't have many people in there because there are more rules, so there are less magicians there. And you know, part of the rules I had to think of when I was doing this, by the extrapolating, you know, like, oh, but what if? Because you always like, what if? That is why this is speculative fiction. But what if, you know, a circle member did a crime somewhere else and then escaped back to the circle's area? Well, they would, you know, be like, hey, this person did a crime in our area, and the circles would, you know, inner circle would then have to catch them and, you know, return them. Vice versa, if someone from the territories went into the, you know, a city, did a crime and left, then the inner circle would need to go get them back, but they would have to work with their, you know, territorial compatriots or equivalents, territorial equivalents, and work at it. And then it had to, you know, well, what if they don't give them back? And then they would probably put an embargo on the territory, which, you know, is, when you look at Russia and all that, like economic sanctions kind of thing. So yeah, it does kind of work as political organizations to do this, and it's just kind of interesting how it's playing out in this. And the territories are not really at war. They're not against the circle. They're just separate countries, basically, within the United States. And you know, you can go and go where you please in it, as long as you keep your sigil and obey by their laws. And their laws maybe do not go into this area, and you say okay, and you don't, because you know they can enforce their laws however they want. But as I said, there's, you know, the population isn't as cut and dry as my little spreadsheet says, and that whole idea is that kind of matriculation. So the cities actually have, in my extrapolated world, a higher population of lower level magicians. And that is because a magician is, by their nature, breaks the laws of nature. So they are kind of odd ducks. They are out of society as we know it. And, you know, everyone can kind of sense that they're different. So if you've not been discovered, you're kind of, you know, not a part of a family that has been, I should back up. So the territories, a lot of the magicians there are legacy magicians. They are families that it's travel in, and they teach it to them, and so they always stay within their family and that kind of thing in that area, and they probably have power in that region because of it, so they often stay there. Now the matriculation is that if you're kind of a wild, whether, you know, your powers have come out of nowhere, no one else in your family knows about it or can, you know, teach you or push you, you're an odd duck, and so you will probably move to the city just for, you know, like, I want to find more people like me. And there's a better chance, because the coincidences that happen in cities, that someone will find you and induct you into the circle. And the territories, you know, finding someone is pretty rare. Like in Sherman, Texas, you know, my example from there, you know, there are 3 magicians in that area by population density, and the 2 are level 1 and 1's level 2. So, you know, naturally occurring in that area is a big deal. Finding a new magician in the territories is hard, and they would get very upset if someone were to go into their areas and take out magicians, potential magicians, and induct them into the inner circle, which will become a plot point in, you know, in book 1. So yeah, I think that's it really. That is a lot of what I've done. We're going to talk about settings and set pieces next time, and some character work too. But again, this is taking a big idea, the prime mover, magic systems exist, and then building a secret masquerading society about it and seeing how it all plays out. And I hope that was interesting for you, because this is what's been consuming me for the last few weeks. And I hope you can use it to build better worlds.